and welcome! In today's video I thought I would give you an update on how I'm progressing with my newfound passion of making bowls on the wood turning lathe. I've managed to make quite a few wooden bowls so far on my wood turning lathe, and it's only been a few weeks, so I'm very pleased. Things seem to be going okay. This was my first bowl. There is a video of me making this. If you're new to the channel and want to go back and have a look, that would be wonderful. But this was my first ever attempt at making a bowl on the wood turning lathe. I've made a hefty, chunky, solid lump of bowl and I really love it. It's gorgeous. And this was my second attempt. I think this has got to be one of my favourites. What I like particularly about this bowl is this inner curve where the outer lip comes back in around the bowl and stops any contents falling out. It works really well and I love it lots. Having said that, I love all of them. They've all got their own individual personality and character and story behind them. This was a lump of tree branch cut down on my own piece of land. So I grew this original tree from a seed, 20 years ago now. So this particular bowl has a lot of history behind it and I love it. I'll say that lots. I love it, I love it, I love it. I love them all, they're gorgeous. So this was my treater bowl, which also has its own video, as do all of these first three. Now, while you've been gone, I've been busy practicing. This little saucery thing was not meant to be a little saucery thing. It was another chunk of wood, just like my treater bowl chunk had been. And it started the same size, and the intention was to make a similar bowl to this one. No two bowls are going to be identical, but it would be close enough. What I actually ended up with was this little shallow saucer, which I was most disappointed with initially. The problem I was running into was lots of catching and tearing of the wood as I was cutting into it. I wasn't sure whether the wood was too dry, too wet, whether I was being too aggressive with my chisels, feeling more confident that I knew what I was doing now, but I was constantly snagging and jarring and hacking out chunks. So in order to tidy things up, I had to cut deeper and shallower and further. So this is where I ended up, with this little shallow saucery piece, which I didn't like at first and was very disappointed with, probably because it wasn't this, which is what I intended it to be. But it's been kicking around the house for a couple of weeks now and it's kind of growing on me. I do rather love it. The next bowl I made was this one. Having had so many troubles and challenges with my little saucery dish, I decided to go back to using a pre-made bowl blank, hoping it would give me a better starting point, therefore a better end result. But I was finding I still had my same challenge of snagging and chipping and jarring at the wood, and have learned from that experience that the problem I was encountering were blunt chisels. No surprise really, by this point my 3 starter chisels had made 4 little bowls. Had chopped their way through 4 chunks of wood to make 4 little bowls. So decided I needed to sharpen my chisels. Now I don't have a stone grinder at the moment, but what I do have are these little attachments that go on my drill. So I put my chisel into the vise, attached these little stone grinders to my drill and sharpened my chisels as best I could. When I went back to carving out my chunk of, I can't remember, beechwood. This was a beechwood bowl blank. So when I went back to carving my chunk of beechwood, things went a lot more smoothly and I managed to tidy up the mess I had initially created. to finish with an actual usable functioning bowl. This could be a lot deeper on the inside, but I was by that point just relieved to have a smooth finished surface, scared to cut any deeper for fear of creating more notches and gouges and completely ruining the piece. So this particular little bowl has a really thick, heavy bottom, and just like my little saucer, I was not happy with it at first. But again, it's been kicking around the house for a few weeks, it's developed its own character, and yeah, it's okay. I don't mind it, it's fine. Perhaps in the years to come, maybe I'll carve the bottom out deeper. But for now, it'll do. I'm going to quit while I'm ahead, at least to have a bowl. And in last week's video, you'll have seen the raft of fallen tree trunks as I hacked my way through the woodland with my chainsaw, from which I have rescued several bowl blanks. These are nice big chunky pieces of wood. This is a piece of willow, and I took a piece of willow like this yesterday, actually pretty much identical to this, probably the next log along the branch, and turned it into this little tiny chunky bowl that I am very pleased with. Things are getting back to a more smooth way of working on the lathe. Nice sharp chisels have made no end of difference. I have subsequently treated myself to a new stone grinder to sharpen my tools with. It's a £50 investment, but as I am so passionate and loving this new hobby, I reckoned it was worth the cost. It's not a particularly expensive stone grinder. I'll put a photo here.
My new bench grinder, chisel sharpening tool.
Something I will say for this stone grinder though, it's really quiet. It's advertised as being really quiet, and it genuinely is very quiet running. It's new at the moment, mind you. Perhaps in a year or so it'll start making horrendous grindy noises. But it runs very smoothly and is very quiet. And yesterday I used it to keep my tools nice and sharp while I carved out this beautiful deep little bowl from a chunk of wood, pretty much identical to this. A chunk of willow, identical to this. So I'm really pleased again with this, and looking forward to my next project, which will be these slightly larger chunks of willow that I've also taken from that tree felling last week. I'm a bit sad looking at these this morning. Looking at the width here, I could probably have cut this a little bit longer, but I didn't, so we'll deal with what we've got. So I don't know if my bowls are going to be any bigger than my original. This was my first bowl, and it fits quite nicely onto this piece of log. So hopefully I'll end up with something about this size. So I've got a few. I've got this big piece and this other big piece, which is slightly narrower. So this should be quite a shallow but large bowl, and hopefully I'll manage to keep this one a little bit deeper. Who knows? Until I start cutting into the wood, I can never be totally sure what my end result is going to be. I also have another chunk of bowl blank I've started to prepare, and this is a piece from that original pine log that made my tree to bowl bowl. So I'm going to have another go and see if I can get a bowl out of this one instead of a little thin saucer. So what have I learnt so far in my wood turning journey? I've learnt it is both important and beneficial to keep your chisels nice and sharp. Another skill to learn and practice along the way. It doesn't seem too difficult, and I'm managing to keep my tools beautifully sharp with my nice new bench grinder. It's working a treat, and I'm getting a beautiful clean cut through the wood rather than all that snagging and jarring that I was creating. Another tip I came across was with sandpaper. As a new wood turner, I'm probably using more sandpaper than someone that's been doing it for years would need to. But I found your standard papery sandpaper was tearing and breaking quite quickly as with the speed of the lathe whizzing round this piece of wood. I did consider other stronger forms of sandpaper, but then you lose the flexibility that I want to get around these rounded curves and shapes. So I came across a tip, I'm not exactly sure where, but onto the back of my standard papery sandpaper, I've been putting some strips of duct tape or Gorilla Tape, that sort of strong durable tape stuff. So I literally take strips of duct tape, don't stick it on, and stick that onto the back of my sandpaper sheet. And I do several pieces along here, and then I can cut it to whatever size piece I want to work with. And this allows my sandpaper to be strong and durable. I can curve it and curl it around the top lips, and it doesn't fall apart. It's also nice and flexible. I can scrunch it all up, which makes it nice and soft for getting into little bits like this divot at the back. So some duct tape on the back of my standard sheets of sandpaper has made them very durable and strong and usable, not tearing into confetti, which was a problem I was coming across in the beginning. Oh, stuck to the table. Right, I'll sort that out later. Put it to one side. There we go. Another excellent tip I managed to acquire was with this last little bowl that I've made, I actually developed 2 fine hairline cracks. I don't know if the camera can pick them up, as the wood was drying out. I knew I'd seen other wood turners filling such cracks, but I didn't know what they were filling them with. So off to Google I went and did my research, and have discovered that you pack this with sawdust and then dribble on some super glue. It needs to be a cyanocrete super glue. Apparently there are several different sorts of super glue, and cyanocrete is the sort you need. Fortunately, I had some cyanocrete in the house. That was the super glue that was on my shelf, so I was able to deal with this crack as soon as I found out how. I managed to get some very fine sawdust just by brushing off the top of my lathe. I got a nice talcum powdery coat that was perfect for packing into these tiny little hairline cracks. Dribbled on some super glue and let it dry. Once dried to a nice hard finish, a quick rub over with some sandpaper to smooth things down, and it's worked beautifully. I've been really pleased with the result of that fix, and it's definitely a tip worth knowing. Hopefully I won't have to use it very often, but it's good to know how it works and that I can do it. So I won't get near the end of a nice piece of work and it be spoilt by a drying crack in my wood. The next thing I'd like to share with you all is the shiny finish I've started putting on my wooden bowls. When I started with my first wooden bowl, I used some mineral oil from my kitchen to keep the woodwork nice and hydrated. This is just a standard food safe mineral oil that I use around the kitchen anyway, on the chopping board and wooden spoons and rolling pins, etc. And it has been perfect to keep the wood hydrated on my little bowls I've been making. But I wanted to find a shinier finish. I also need it to be food safe. So off to Google I went again to do some more research, and I've come across a product called shellac. Shellac? Shellac. I think it's also known as French polish, but I'm not certain on that. Shellac is basically a combination of 2 ingredients that make a nice shiny glaze to go onto your finished wooden products. We need denatured alcohol, which is really super strong 90-something% alcohol, and they add a horrible smell to it. It's probably a horrible taste as well, I don't know, I haven't tried drinking it, but that's the point of the horrible smell. You wouldn't want to be drinking it. It makes it smell like my nail polish remover. So for any of you ladies out there who know what nail polish remover smells like, this is what the denatured alcohol smells like. For any of you gentlemen out there who know what nail polish remover smells like. So it makes it smell like my nail polish remover. And to denatured alcohol, the ingredient that makes it shellac is you add these shellac flakes. They're kind of little glassy crystals. My shellac is blonde shellac. It comes in different shades of brown. I think blonde is the least colourful one there is the least brown you can get. Once it's dissolved in the alcohol and put on your wooden products, you really can't see any colour from the shellac. So I've got some to show you. Now my first little bowl was coated in the mineral oil, and that's all the treatment it's had so far. But even after oiling, you can still add shellac coating to your finished wooden products. So I'm going to put some shellac on this first little bowl today, because it's now the only one of all my bowls that I haven't put a shellac finish on. Everything else has been shellacked as I've been playing for the past few weeks. And I kept this one specially to show you. So to make the shellac, you really need to make it a day in advance. I've put 100 millilitres or 100 grams, it's quite nice to be able to weigh it on the scales, of the denatured alcohol in this glass jar. And to that, I'm simply going to add 25 grams of the shellac flakes. Well, I've actually got a big piece in here. It's a big piece of shellac. It's the biggest bit that was in my bag. Came out this morning when I was weighing things. Can I break it? Oh yes, it just didn't get crumbled up. So I'm going to put the shellac flakes into my denatured alcohol. Now the measurements don't need to be dead accurate and precise. You can actually make this mixture more concentrated by adding more shellac flakes. I think up to about 50 grams of shellac to 100 grams of alcohol. I forgot to bring my little stick. I could use the end of my paintbrush, I suppose. So we give this a stir for a minute or two, just to help the dissolving process start. And then leave this sitting on the countertop till tomorrow, and then give it another stir, and it'll be a nice clear liquidy varnish ready to put onto your wooden products. Some tissue there. Now I've actually got some. I'll put the lid on this one. So that's it all in there. Shake it about. And that alcohol will dissolve those flakes so they all merge into the liquid as one glossy varnishy finish. True Blue Peter style. Here's one I made earlier. This jar was about half full. I've used lots of it, but then I've been coating all of my bowls. So let's clear up this mess, put everything out of the way. There we go. We'll keep you in shot. Part of what we're doing. So I'm just using a standard chunky art brush to paint on my bowl. I've got a piece of old cardboard in case I spill any. If you're doing lots of shellac coating, you'd want to be doing this in a well ventilated room. Open the windows and the door, because this stuff does give off smelly fumes. And I simply paint this onto the bowl. It soaks in quite readily, and within a couple of hours it's dry. So even though this bowl has been previously oiled, I can still give it this shellacky finish, and it works perfectly well. You can give it a second coat. It's just like adding a varnish to things, but because it's so liquid and the alcoholiness, it does actually get sucked into the wood. So it's slightly deeper than a surface coat of varnish. Gets sucked into those wood grains and makes them lovely. Oh, shiny. So picking up the gloss, picking up the wetness. Leave that to dry for a bit, turn it over and do the outside. Let that dry and I'll probably turn it back and give the inside a second coat, because that's where most of the wear and tear will be happening, is on the inside of the bowl. My brush, I simply take some kitchen paper and squash off the excess and leave this to dry like that. And that's all you need to do with your brush. This may get a little hard and crunchy as the shellac on the bristles dries, but unlike the paint you use in your house, it doesn't matter, because when you next want to shellac something, you simply put your brush into your shellac mixture and any remaining crunchy shellac on the bristles just melts away into the mixture and you end up with soft fluffy bristles again, ready to paint your next item. This is actually dry enough already. Flip it over and do the outside. Get some in that little dot. There we go.
The shellac coating creates a wonderful, food-safe, shiny finish to my wooden bowls. Perfectly durable for a quick rinse under the tap and a wipe down with a damp cloth. I wouldn't go so far as soaking it in the washing up bowl or putting it in the dishwasher, but a quick wipe down is all it should ever need.
And squish off my brush. Lid back on my jar, and lots left to use next time. Give this first one another shake. It's starting to colour now slightly. Now the shellac, as I said, is like a nail polish remover, so do be cautious using it on any shiny surfaces you already have around your home, your kitchen worktops, your varnished tables, because I'm sure it will help strip that shiny surface off.
Once it's dry, it's perfectly fine. It's just the wet liquid you need to be cautious of.
So always make sure wherever you're working is covered and protected. Well, I think that's me for today, all caught up with the excitement of wood turning. So bye for now, and see you next time. And remember, whatever you're doing, have fun doing it.
If you've enjoyed today's video, don't forget to click that like button and let me know. Click subscribe and YouTube will make sure you see my next video. So bye for now, and we'll see you next time. And don't forget, whatever you're doing, have fun doing it.